The Tigers keep winning, but what does that mean for them securing the SEC championship?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. And hey, maybe it's your second listen. This is a bonus edition as we join our buddy Ben Taylor of Auburn Opelika this morning over at the Auburn Network family of stations. Ben, you and I reacted after Auburn took down Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. And we reacted specifically just to the game. I mean, gut reaction, incredible win. So now as we kind of look ahead to the rest of Auburn's schedule, and it's like, okay, the teams that are closest to them have a tougher schedule than Auburn has. And of course, they'll still play Alabama. They'll still play Texas A&M, which we'll talk more about in a second. But the next thing on the list is they've got to take on an Arkansas team that I do think is more tricky than most people.
This team scares me. Arkansas does. And the main reason is because of Coach Cal. He has a tendency to step up for big games when it comes to stuff like this. There have been people that say, yeah, but look at what he does in the tournament. Yeah, but look at what he does to get him to the tournament. So that is the thing is he may mail it in late or may stub his toe when the tournament rolls around, the NCAA tournament. But as far as regular season, look, he had all odds stacked against him. Kentucky's a very good ball club, and he went into Rupp Arena, and they fully expected to blow the doors off of Arkansas. And Arkansas kind of did what Auburn did against Alabama this past weekend. They basically led the entire game over Kentucky once they got rolling. And so, and Kentucky, they went back and forth a couple of times, but never had a chance to pull away. And then Arkansas ends up winning, I think, by double digits, if I'm not mistaken. So now that same Arkansas team loses to Texas A&M.
It was 89-79 when they played Kentucky.
Yeah. And that same Arkansas team loses to Texas A&M, but you and I will talk about that a little bit later on. Maybe that still proves that was an 8-point loss that they held close to Texas A&M. So, yeah, this team scares me. They can get hot. They're super athletic. He's a wild card version of what Bruce Pearl likes, which is basically up and down the floor, and he likes long guys that can kind of spread it out a little bit.
Sure.
And that's what we're going to see with Arkansas. And he would love nothing more than to basically make his fans feel a lot better about their season by knocking off the number one team in the nation on Wednesday night.
Yeah, and I mean, he'll have a chance to. I mean, I'm picking Auburn in this game, but since the Kentucky game, obviously they beat Kentucky. They go to Texas and win, which, whatever at this point.
Yeah, we never know with Texas.
Yeah. I don't think they're good anymore. I think they're a bottom half SEC team at this point. But still, that's not like, it's not saying they're awful. It's just, right. I think there's probably 8 SEC teams better than them. They kept it close with Alabama. 85-81, and there were kind of some fouls late that maybe separated that even more. And then they whooped LSU, and they lost by 8 at Texas A&M. So since the Kentucky win, they've been solid, not good, not great, but solid. And I mean, I asked you and Daryl this on the postgame show that we did. It's like, okay, all-time high, arguably the biggest regular season win in program history. And then you play Wednesday, 8 p.m. tip against the sneaky Arkansas team. Like, could this be a trap game? I don't think that it is. But if Arkansas kept it close, it would not surprise me.
No, keeping it close would not surprise me. Auburn losing would surprise me. And the reason being is because while me and you and Daryl were visiting, that I got to see post-game comments from Johni Broome, and they kind of asked him the same question that you're bringing up right now about, how big was this against Alabama? And he goes, going to be great to celebrate for the next 24 hours. And then we got a big game with Arkansas coming into town on Wednesday night. So clearly the culture is there with saying, hey, stop looking ahead. It's game by game. You've got a target on your back. So I think that this team understands that. I think we've gotten past the point of, taking a team for granted, especially in the SEC. I mean, all you got to do is pop in the Arkansas-Kentucky game if you want to give them any sort of motivation and go, this is what happened. They went on the road in at least one of the largest confines in the Southeastern Conference, maybe not the noisiest, but the largest, and they took care of business against Cal's former team.
Yeah, I guess just a question. I agree with you, but a question that does need to be asked, I think, is, okay, but how unique was that situation as far as Cal and his ties to Kentucky?
Yeah.
Is that relevant at all? Or was that just such an outlier because of the storylines and the history there? Does that even actually matter? I don't know. I don't know. Based on the rest of the season, I would say that it doesn't matter. But it shows that they're capable of it. Cal's just kind of come out and started like throwing some of his guys under the bus and saying like, we're soft or we're not tough and, not as, strong as I thought we were. And like, I guess guys can respond to that in different ways, right? Every team responds to things differently, but I mean, he's calling his guys out. We'll see if they can answer on Wednesday night.
It'd be interesting to see how they respond throughout the rest of the year. This is a total different coaching method than what Musselman was doing over at Arkansas. And Cal's kind of that. I know we give him a lot of flack for him being a media darling and him being kind of sarcastic to media and always giving you a soundbite. But at the end of the day, he's right there with the Patinos of the world, like that old school, like you're talking about. Hey, we're soft. We're not doing our job.
Yeah.
You heard the story this past week numerous times about how Buzz starts every practice at A&M. He's an old school guy by rolling a ball out to the center and everybody has to dive on the floor for it. Yeah, that's going to happen until all of a sudden somebody breaks a wrist and then that stops. I can promise you that. But still, that old school type, and that's what Cal is. And so, and he's got a point, Zach. He can tell his team that because they're within 5, 6, 7, 8 points of winning ball games every game. So he can kind of get in their ear and say, hey, what have you done to better yourself today to keep you from getting over that hump? And beating number one on their home floor would get them over the hump.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas is going to feel really bad about this season when it's over.
Yeah.
But if you can say we beat Kentucky and beat Auburn on the road, like it does give you something to build on. And so we'll see. We'll see.
Walmart would be super happy if he wins Wednesday night.
Sure. What, and Tyson's Chicken? Isn't that the big one? The Chicken Man or whatever?
Chicken Man and Walmart Man would be very happy.
Yeah. Hey, I want to talk about Texas A&M because they're not being discussed as a top 10 team. No. I've said that pretty consistently, and they should be.
Yeah.
That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're ever going to get any money back. Now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched your unique tax situations, an expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this is Taxes into a TurboTax. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax full live service. Real-time updates only on the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. Ben Taylor of Auburn Opelika this morning. I'm Zac Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. There's all this talk. What?
I didn't get any TurboTax love. I didn't get any TurboTax love.
You want to say something about TurboTax just real quick? You good?
That's what Lori uses. That's what the wife uses.
Okay, so y'all use TurboTax. That's awesome. That's awesome. So there's been talk. I mean, we were talking about going to Kentucky from the Arkansas point of view when they won there, but most folks are saying that at Kentucky is Auburn's toughest road game remaining. I think it's at A&M for multiple reasons. I think Buzz Williams, their coach, I think matches up well from a coaching standpoint against Bruce Pearl. We've seen that over the last few seasons, but also like A&M, they're 9-3 in conference play. Mm-hmm. And assuming they went out and they beat Auburn, that gets interesting. Because then if Auburn drops it to Alabama, like you're in a situation now where it's like, are we splitting this SEC regular season championship? Like we saw with Bruce's first one when they split it with South Carolina. So, Is A&M in a spot where they can win out? I don't think so. And it's nothing against them. I just don't think anyone would. I mean, similar to Alabama, they've got a tough stretch here. So, I mean, we're talking on Tuesday. They play Mississippi State Tuesday night. They go
at the hump, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the road.
Which they just kind of shocked Ole Miss recently. They host Tennessee.
Doable.
They host Vandy.
Doable.
I'm not as high on Vandy as other folks.
Me either.
They go to Florida. Yikes.
Yeah,
they host Auburn, and then they go to LSU. I'm not really worried about that one.
No.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. The fact that they still play Tennessee or Mississippi State as we record this, Tennessee, Florida, and Auburn. Like I don't think they're going 4-0 in that stretch.
No, they're going to lose to Florida or Auburn. They're not going to beat both Florida and Auburn back to back, in my opinion. So that's where it becomes a serious game for Auburn because
that's a Saturday, Tuesday swing too.
Yeah, if Florida just absolutely annihilates them, and I don't think that's going to happen, but since it is at Gainesville, there could be a chance that Florida kind of, I don't know, handles them a little
I guess
easier
we
than
go.
most.
I mean, we go to Lexington, then to College Station in that same stretch. I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah, that is. I mean, just the conference in general is brutal, man. But you mentioned A&M. I mean, just the fact that they're the sneaky team that you had to remind me after the Alabama game on Saturday. Sure. You're like, hey, are you watching out for A&M? And I'm like, not really. And then I look down and I'm like, holy crap, they're a top 10 team. Like I knew that, but it just did not register.
No, they're not discussed as if they're a top 10 team.
No. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, this is worrisome now because, as I mentioned to you at the beginning, Auburn's got an opportunity to basically close out the season. I picked undefeated, but if they were to go 5-1 or, I don't see them going 3-3 by any means, but even at 4-2 could probably still win the SEC regular season title.
Could win a share of it. I don't think you win it outright.
And so now that you start throwing in Texas A&M, who's a top 10 team, again, seems like Auburn just keeps drawing all these top teams to play, and they're in conference, and that shows you the strength of the conference. But A&M is definitely, I am one that has looked past them. I have not really paid attention to them. Yeah. Next thing you know, they sneak up there. They're a top 10 team, probably going to make a deep run in the tournament because if they remain top 10, they're going to get a top seed and get a couple of good games to be able to get through. So, watch out for A&M.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with their rank. There's a lot of folks in the basketball world that say, hey, like they're deserving of that ranking, but are they truly like a top 10 team? We'll learn. I mean, we will learn where they should be by the time they play Auburn. Because
listen, they've had
between now and then they'll play Mississippi State, Tennessee, Vandy, and Florida. Like we will learn very quickly over the next 2 weeks how good A&M is.
Well, they've had an easier schedule. I will give them that because since they lost to Kentucky, 81-69, they played LSU. We know how bad that is.
Sure.
Ole Miss has been hit or miss, but they beat Ole Miss when Ole Miss was ranked number 16 in the nation. Texas, you just mentioned it earlier in the pod. I mean, we're not believers in Texas. Oklahoma, not a believer in Oklahoma.
Sure.
South Carolina, they're right there with probably LSU. Missouri, I still don't think they're a top 15 team, but
I do.
Whatever.
I think Missouri's really good.
You do? You're a big believer. Georgia, no, they don't do it for me. Okay. And then they beat Arkansas. So they've had the easiest of schedules, I think, in the Southeastern Conference these last 6 games to kind of get through. So now it's going to get tougher being at Mississippi State, playing host Tennessee, as well as you got Florida and Auburn thrown in there. So they come out of that 5-1, 4-2. They're a top 10 team. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, we'll know. We'll know in 2 or 3 weeks. We'll know exactly how good A&M is. And right now they're deserving of it. And they've been a top 10 team for last several weeks. So they're just not really being discussed about it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Buzz is just
with that.
I don't want to say he's got Bruce's number, but he and Bruce are a lot alike, in my opinion. The way they work officials, the way they motivate their team, even their off the court stuff. I mean, Buzz is that guy that made the team come out and talk to the veterans about the national anthem and all that a few years ago. And, Bruce does what he does with, the parades that they've done downtown, as well as making the team be out for the national anthem at Vanderbilt when Vandy wasn't, that kind of thing. So I think there are a lot of similarities. And so they kind of come
from a matchup standpoint, and we've seen this not so much with this year's team, but with other Bruce Pearl teams that were good. Whenever they played a team that was physical and slowed things down, they struggled. And I mean, A&M, it always feels like that's a battle. Now, with this team, I love getting in rock fights with this team. I think the attitude that this team has, dating back to the plane incident, and Dylan saying we got a bunch of dogs on this team. I don't mind if somebody comes out and they try to get physical with this team, because I think they respond well. Yeah, I think this team can play any game you want. Yeah. Well, they've proven that they can do. If you say, hey, we're going to slow it down, cool, we'll do that too. We have something you don't have, which is a National Player of the Year. We have a Johni. And by the way, we have a Denver Jones that can lock up anybody out front that you throw at us. Yeah, I mean, we could argue and nitpick on like who the second biggest win of the season is for Auburn, but the biggest win being this past weekend. I think it's Tennessee is the second best win. And when you look at the flow and style of the game when they went to Coleman and won, super fast pace, super, high scoring. And then the win against Tennessee that was just as ugly and as physical, and just every possession on both sides was a struggle. And being able to win both of those, like I think that single-handedly kind of displays how this team can handle anything you throw at them. I take it further back than that. I go out of conference. I think that Houston and Iowa State, especially seeing what they've done since then. Sure. It showed early on in the season that this team could play with different teams, especially when you get sucked into those tournaments like the Maui Invitational, where y'all are all stuck there at one spot and you get to kind of both scout and see the team in real time. Yeah. And I think that made a huge difference, and that we should have probably clued in at that point, hey, this team could be special. But I think we did. I think we did. I think Auburn folks were like, why aren't we number one at this point? And they're like, oh, hold on. Yeah. Wait, let's get in conference. And then we got in conference, and, Reese Davis thinks we're only going to be a 500 conference, which is awesome. So I got that going for him. And then, and instead, this conference is proven when you look at everybody. I mean, just look at the top 10. Look at what's up there. Yeah. It's loaded. It's loaded for the SEC. Ben Taylor, how can people check out everything you've got going on? AUnetwork.com. Click on the WANI logo. We go 6 to 9 each and every morning. Do sports just after 7. And we've done Top Button Tuesday already this week, as well as Double D Mondays, where Daryl played sick and I had to fill in for that, but that's okay. He's been going through it. Our guy's been going through it. He's having a rough time, man. But you guys go check that out, and you can catch me Monday through Friday. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe if you're tuning in on audio. Please subscribe and leave a review, especially on iTunes and Spotify. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.